This week on SV Lynx. Welcome to our SV Lynx video. This week we've got a busy week because we've got to finish up the cabin top, glassing all the seams, and getting it ready to raise the roof.
Yeah, and boy, is that going to be a exciting bit. We've got to also construct some strange devices that we're going to hook up to our Bobcat to raise that thing, and it's going to be interesting because obviously that Bobcat is not made to do this. So we're going to give it the old college effort, as it says, and we'll find out if we manage to get it up there or not. So let's get over to the lot. And we'll start by working on the top and getting it ready, and then by the end of this video we're going to put it up on top. So we'll see how it goes. Let's do it. Good morning, everybody. Today Brian and I are here at the lot, and we got an interesting week ahead of us. We're going to lift the whole cabin top up into the air and suspend it over the top of this thing. And that comes with a whole bunch of problems. So to get started with it, we started clearing the area here. We'll clear this out of the way. And because we have to move some stuff through here. Let me show you. Our problem number one of many in putting this cabin top up there is that this is thing sitting on all these forms right here. And we've got to get all those forms out of here. In order to do that, we got to lift this roof up, and we can't use the Bobcat for that because the forms and the cubes are in the way. The second problem is where do these cubes go? We thought we would just be able to push them out to the sides and leave enough room down the middle. But upon measuring, we found that there's just one cube in the dead center on the side over there that's 10 feet by 10 feet, and it's 2 feet too wide. So even if we push it up there, it's going to get in the way of the Bobcat by maybe 1.5 feet. So it has to get out of there. So we had to come up with a way to get rid of that cube. And we can't go out the back. I'll explain that in a minute. But what we found is that we can take it out forward and just move it all the way down towards the bow of the boat. And that way it's out of the way of us putting the roof in until the roof's in. Once the roof's in, we can put it wherever we want. But to do that is tricky because in order to remove the forms first, before we can move the cubes, we've got to raise this roof. Well, we won't have the Bobcat to do that, certainly not in here. And so we're going to have to do that with human power. So on Friday, we're bringing in a whole team of people, and we're going to lift this about 6 feet more, 5 to 6 feet up. So a little higher than my hand here, but 5 or 6 feet up. At that point, we can get in underneath enough to get all this MDF out of here. We have to save 3 of these cross ribs here, one from the forward, one in the middle, one at the stern there. And we have saved those because we're using those later, and I'll get to that in a bit. But we'll save those, we'll destroy the rest in getting it all out of there. At that point, we can get to the first 4 cubes, but not the ones at the back because it's sitting on those. So these first 2, this one we're going to just drag it all the way down to the end and put it down there. Then we're going to take that 10 by 10 that's our problem and drag it all the way down out of the way for when we bring the thing in. And then the last couple cubes here on this side, there's plenty of room to slide them over against the fence. And that'll clear our area here. And that's where we're going to finish as far as the cubes on Friday. On Saturday morning, the Bobcat could get to the stern, and so we can use it to lift the stern up high enough. We can put in supports back there, get rid of those 2 cubes by sliding to the sides, and he can come in with a Bobcat, pick it up, and we'll start moving it forward. That'll bring up the next issue, which is going to be how we get it forward, because we're going to run into Big Bertha. She's going to be in the way, and the Bobcat can't get that top in far enough because of it. But we have a plan for that, and for that, Brian and I need to build a particularly strange device out of wood that's going to mount onto 10-foot forks on the front of the Bobcat. And so we're going to start constructing that, and we'll show you that. But I'm getting ahead of things, and I'll show you how that works. We're on the final rain catchment panel that we have to glass. So the first thing we, of course, have to do is, like we did on the others, is fix these edges. So I'm going to get some thickened epoxy on here. Okay, it's ready for glassing, which we'll get to in about a minute or three. First layer on this last starboard front of the helm section. All right, we're done with layer number 2. Now we're going to get the peel ply. What we discovered on the peel ply is you got to stick this middle down first. With the glass, we measure it from one end and go over, but with the peel ply, it doesn't stretch at all. And so you've got to do from the middle, get its length correct, and then you can smooth it down. All right, that's the last of glassing the bottom of these troughs. So the good news is we'll be able to flip this over after lunch and start gluing all of these panels into one big panel now. And it's important that we get that done today because tomorrow we need to tab them so that it has enough days to set up before we lift it. And that's going to put a lot of stress on it, so we need to make sure that it's good and strong before we do that. So it's important that we glue these together today, just in the timing standpoint. So of course the difficult thing is that this has to come down. It has to this curve, and the foam curves down really naturally, but to get it absolutely down hard onto these forms, we would either have to drill through it and put some blocks and stuff in there, and we could have done that, but we just stuck a ton of weight up there, and that has got it pressed down in all places right against there, with the exception of this spot, which we clamped down, and this spot right here, which we needed to get the two pieces to match exactly right there, and now they do. So this is all really nice and flat now, so it's good to go. Now we got this big panel here glued on to the first flat one on the roof over there, but that's as far as we got because we're just running late, and we actually ran out of epoxy. Had to go get epoxy at my house. Took some time. So what we're going to do is let this set up tonight, and then we're going to glass this one tomorrow with tabbing, and then we'll glue on the other two panels, let them set up overnight, and glass those the following day. If we do that, we'll still be ready for Friday to lift this whole thing up, because all of it will be glassed in by with 2 days to set up well. So that's the plan. We've got lots of other little things to do. So when we're not glassing, like for example, early in the morning, it might still be damp in the morning. So what we'll be doing is building our wood jig for lifting this thing, and we'll show you that tomorrow. But for today, as far as we got, but we got all the curves right here, and including the fact that this is basically level, which is supposed to be, and the trough that we put in is slightly downhill inside of the trough, so the water will continue to run downhill towards the center. But we had to make sure that this was absolutely level so that the trough down below was angled down. So that's what a lot of this weight that you saw us put on here was to do, is to make sure that we got that curve down to where it's supposed to be, so that this was correct, because this is basically level all the way around the front of this. It's only up the side here that part of the roof is higher, and it's all running downhill to here, but after this it becomes level. So inside of here we lowered the trough at an angle so it goes all the way over, and so that's working. And we just needed to make sure that this was in the right position. We don't want this to harden up with glue in the wrong form, and so we made sure that that's all correct, and we'll continue to do that as we go over. And we've got a lot of cleanup work to do on these bridges. There's still a lot of work to go on each of these bridges and getting this smoothed out, and there's a little bit of fairing and such in here. So until we get this just where we want it. Some of this, like right along here, is very nice already, so we don't have to do too much work there. So most of these. The front, which we showed you in last week's video, is a little bit more warbly than the rest of it is. So we'll do a little bit of work on that too, to get it as nice as we can. But all the warbly part is underneath of here, and it's just not going to be seen much. Everything that you're mostly going to see is from up here. The part that's underneath, there's about a 6-inch black at the top of the windows, and that trough is going to be hidden behind that. And so we're probably going to paint the underside of that trough black, and it'll just blend in. When you're looking out from the inside, you really won't see it. So it'll all look fine, and mostly the top has to look the best, because this you're going to see all the time. So we're going to work real hard to make this look very nice before we're finished. Time to get started on tabbing these two pieces together. So because the epoxy shrinks, we went ahead and filled a little bit this morning. That's still wet. We're going to glass right over the top now. And so we're going to roll this out and get this double tab layers on here. I just pulled a peel ply on this, and it looks really good. This trough part came out very nice everywhere. Nice and hard now. And that good grip underneath. Of course, we're going to be flipping this over in just a few minutes, because we've got to bond it today to the main roof, because our goal is to have a whole roof glued together today, and then we'll finish the tabbing on it tomorrow, and then it'll be ready. So got a bit of work to go still, but we're happy with how this trough is coming out. Okay, time to join the biggest panel of the roof onto this section we've already bonded and tab together. Turn around and say hi. It's the Admiral. She's doing glove delivery for us right now. We're running low. Right over on that table over there. All right, we're gonna try and lift this a little to get it over the plastic edges. Okay. It's pretty good. All right, now in. How are you?
Sounds good.
Me too. Okay, we just filled in the top ridge because where those two flat boards come together, of course, you get a little V shape like that. And so we've filled that in now. Of course, that'll suck in as it cures, and we'll put a little more up there when we put the tab on tomorrow. But it's very well glued at this point. It's going to hold to tomorrow. And once this sets up overnight, we won't need to have these tensioners on here any much more than this. So just to hold it down while it cures. So that concludes today. We've got all these pieces glued together now. All the big pieces are together into one big roof. And tomorrow we're going, of course, double tab that row and double tab this done. So then that'll set up for 2 days. And then we'll begin the job of moving this. Although on Friday we're not actually going to move it, but we are going to mess with it. We're going to lift it up about 6 feet in the air so that we can start getting the MDF and stuff out from underneath of it, start getting some of these tables moved and that kind of stuff, constructing all the different bridges and jigs and things that we need to get this job done, because it's a crazy amount of different things that we have to do. So we're looking good though. We've got the Bobcat scheduled for Saturday, so we had to move along at a pace that would get us there, and we have. So it's all looking like we're going to be good to move Saturday. So Friday prep, and Saturday we actually lift it all the way in the air, 14 feet in the air, drive it underneath, and do some other shenanigans to get that thing in there past Big Bertha. But we've got it planned out, so we know what we're doing. It's just a matter of whether it works or not. We'll find out. Stay tuned. It was overcast this morning and a little damp, so before we do any glassing, we want to let that dry out some. It's almost dry out it now, but so we've gotten to work on our contraption for lifting this cabin top up on top. The thing is that it's got to go a little bit over 14 feet high, and our Bobcat only lifts about 10. And the front of this, as you can see, is about 2 feet lower than the middle, and we'll be lifting from the middle. So that means we've got to get this edge an extra 2 feet, which means we need about 16 feet high from this edge. And since that Bobcat only goes up a little less than 10, we're building these extensions on here, on these pallets, so that this is going to be lifting the roof up here, and that'll get us 16 feet in the air to get this front edge to clear over Big Bertha. So Brian and I are starting to assemble these things right now. There's more to it than just that, but that's a start. All right, so let's put this one on first. the first half. There's another pallet that goes forward to get a bigger spread between these. So our issue with getting the top up here with the Bobcat is that arch right up there. Because as we bring this through, we're going to reach that arch and we can't go any further with these little constructed cubes that we're building. So we have to stop when we reach there, but that's not far enough by about this far. We've got to go that much further to get the roof on there centered. So what we're going to do is once we get it there, we're going to brace up the back of the roof. We're going to set it down up there and lower these contraptions down. And then I'll show you here. So this is built on this pallet, and it's actually 180 degrees reversed when it's on the 10-foot long forks. And that allows us to get up to the bulkhead number 6, where we have to stop. And then we'll support the back of the roof up there, and the top of the roof will be on Bertha, and we'll lower this down, slide this first pallet off of the forks, turn it around so it's in this position you see it in currently, and put it on the other side of Big Bertha, which will now be here. And now we'll have some room between this one and that one to move forward 2 more feet, which is all we need, that far, and it's in position. So the reason we did it this way with these 2 separate blocks is so that we can reverse this one as we get to bulkhead number 6. So that should be real fun and exciting. So this morning we have Brian and John and Dale over there getting started, and my cousin Todd and our buddy Nick are going to show up in just a few minutes. And so we're starting to prep all of the different arches and stands and everything else we need to get this roof raised up. Because today we're going to raise it 10 feet or so in the air, but not move it. Tomorrow we're going to move it. So we're building stuff, and Dale and I are sort of prepping everything else. We have to get this roof high enough to drive the Bobcat underneath of it. So we've already lifted it up part way. And what we did is we took it up this high, lifting this way, and set it on here. Then we got 4 guys underneath of it and did this kind of a lift and put these holders on here temporarily. And we're making sure not to get underneath it here right now. But now we have to go up even higher and put the actual arch that's going to be holding it temporarily here. And so we're going to bring that arch in a moment, and then we'll show you us lifting this whole monstrosity even higher. Then we got to go to the back side and bring that up too. Now we had to get the arch in and take out those 2 temporary supports. So Nick on the left, which you can't see, John in the middle, and me on the end, we could lift it because most of the weight was sitting on the back. And then Todd, Dale, and Brian pushed in the arch. We could then take out those 2 supports, but there was still a bit of an issue. So we had to go around back and lift it because these forward supports were blocked by the table right now. So the roof wasn't vertical over those supports, or the supports weren't vertical. And so we moved it forward a little bit until we got the supports directly underneath. Now it was time to go to the back with everybody, and Brian just steadied the front for a moment while we lifted the back up. There's a bunch of guys. And it wasn't that hard of a lift. Again, some of the weight's on the front. And then what we did is put in the temporary supports you saw us use on the front back there. And then we used ratchet straps to attach it to the fence to make sure that that wasn't going to sway around anywhere. And we didn't show you this, but we also screwed these front posts into the tables right there so that they couldn't move. So it was really secure. We tested it well. But now it was time to get all this MDF and plywood that we put in there all out. And so the entire team got together and we worked quickly, and it really didn't take us more than maybe an hour to take all of that MDF apart and set it all aside so that we could clear these tables off, ready to be moved. All right, ready to do this? Next up, we needed to take some of those MDF pieces that we saved from the forums and mount them to the top of bulkhead 6 and 5. We have to raise this roof about 6 inches higher than these bulkheads right now because we need room to be able to put in things like the window panels and such underneath. And we don't want the roof all the way lowered down yet. So these are going to both extend it higher and also give it the shape to keep it, while it sits up there, from warping into the wrong shape and then setting up that way. So that's why we saved these MDF pieces, and that's why we're up here putting them on. We did them one at a time because they're heavy, and this way we could lift them up a little easier while we screwed them in. For bulkhead number 5, the one in front of bulkhead 6 that we were just showing you, we had to put extensions up to hold the MDF up, because this is where the window panels would go. But once with these extensions in, we also screwed in some MDF panels to these as well. The first order of business was to bring the Bobcat in, so we had to remove the chain link fence so that he could approach the cabin top from the alley, and then lift the weight of it with the forks so that we could take out the 2 supports. Then we could slide those 2 tables apart to make room for him to drive down the center, and put up 2 more supports to hold it in that position. So that was stage 1. We had to get these 2 tables out of the way so that the Bobcat can come down the middle. The next phase that we need to do now is go get the diesel engine. We have to place it in next to the boat. That's so that we can get the bulkhead across the back of the boat. Until that engine's in there, we can't do that. So we're going to go place the engine next to the bay where it goes. And that has to be done now, because once we put the roof over it, there's going to be posts holding the roof up that he won't be able to get the engine in there. So everything in its correct order. Once the engine's in place, then we're going to go on to phase 2 of the roof, and we've got to construct something on the back of this first. Here we're just checking to make sure that we can lift off the box from the top of the engine without hitting the chamfer panel that will be there eventually. So now what we're doing is we're putting one of the previous forms to hold shape the roof on here ahead of time before we lift it up on top, because it'd be just easier than doing that 14 feet in the air. The idea here is that by attaching this form to the stern portion of the cabin top, we're going to mount our 2 legs that go from here down to the ground to these forms, and then these forms will help the roof keep its shape while it sits here until we lower it onto its permanent mounts later on. All right, we're ready to give this contraption a roll here. You can see that this is going to the width of where the door is here. We're going to bring it all the way and stop right when we get to that face of this right here. But we got to get it 14 feet in the air as well. So after a lot of measuring and checking, we got ready to give the first attempt at lifting the roof. Unfortunately, this first attempt wasn't right. The position of the Bobcat was too far back, and the cabin top was actually landing back onto it, tilting. And also, it just felt a little unstable and wobbly, so we decided to put some control lines on that we could hold from the sides. This is actually the 3rd attempt, and the first 2 attempts were very wobbly and very tilted at times, and they were not filling me with confidence. I even considered just aborting this whole thing and hiring a crane for several $1,000s to come in and pick it up. And I decided to give it this last 3rd try after we rebalanced everything again and see if we can't get it at least partly high enough and still be stable enough to roll forward. It seemed that we got the balance a little bit better, and it did wobble a little bit as it went up, and that, of course, gave me a little concern still, but it did go up. And so the next big challenge would be we have to remove that front support, and then we're going to have to drive forward. And what is it going to be like when we start to move if it was wobbling this much when we were just raising it? Well, it did wobble more, but not so much that I called a halt to the whole thing. We just held it steady with the lines as much as we could, and it didn't look like it was going to fall. So we decided to keep going, and the problem we had now was, of course, we're getting past the point of no return. We're either going to get it up there or we're going to have a disaster. So we marched forward. But when Brian went to raise it, as you raise the Bobcat up, it actually tilts back because that thing's going up on an arc, and you have to lower the tip down, angle it down. But he went up too far before he re-angled it, and that top nearly slid off the supports. If we had the lines holding it from the front, we would have lost it. But he got it leveled back out again, and the issue was, of course, that he had to raise it even higher still. But he had to keep raising it up, which tilted it, so he'd have to recorrect from that, and then raise it up, it would tilt again, and recorrect from that. And we just had to hold it and hope it would stay. And from inside his cab there, it was actually very difficult for him to see up above to exactly how much tilt he had. So I was signaling to him with my hands, or trying to yell over the loud engine of the Bobcat to give him direction as to how much tilt he has, or which direction to tilt it, to fix it. And that's when the Bobcat suddenly jerked up a little bit, and we nearly lost the roof off of here. But somehow it held there, and Brian corrected it as fast as he could. As I mentioned, we were already past the point of no return, so we had to get it up here, and the best thing we could do was get it over bulkhead 6 so that it could support it if we had to lower it down. So Brian immediately got it moving forward, kind of slowly, but moving. What I meant by the point of no return is, at this point, to back it up and go return it to its original stands would have just as much chance of dropping the roof as just continuing. So we kept going. At this point, I had to let loose of my control line and run up to where the door was to guide Brian in, because he had to line up exactly with this doorway, and we had to get it right up to the point where it was just about going to touch bulkhead number 6 and have him stop. So that's where we are at this point. Then I went back and gave Brian some instructions about what we're going to be doing next, mostly telling him not to move anything at all for a while, because we had to make some changes here to the supports at the back and add those longer extension legs. So he had to just sit here and let the Bobcat run, because we found that when you turn it off and turn it back on again, it often jerks, and we couldn't have that with that roof way up in the air. So while our cabin top sat suspended 16 feet up in the air, Brian and I worked feverishly on reconfiguring this arch to give it support at the back. Little did we know, but the scariest moment was just about to arrive. As soon as we got this support in at the back, we decided to lower the cabin top down, which is when we had a problem, because suddenly this jerked and we nearly lost the roof. Brian and I held on to it as it swayed back and forth, but it didn't fall. So now that we were in this position, resting on bulkhead 6 and the new supports, Nick had to run up forward and take off the front pallet, work it underneath bulkhead number 6 to the other side. Then, once he stood it back up, he had to reverse it around 180 degrees and stick it back on the forks on this side of that bulkhead, because at this point, the cabin top isn't far enough forward, and we couldn't go any more forward because of the arch at the top of this doorway. So by putting this on this side, we can now relift the top and move it forward a few feet. So Brian had to come up, and you can see now why those pallets had to barely fit in that doorway. And now he could move forward and bring the cabin top to its final position. But we weren't done with scary moments yet. Right as we got in here, suddenly again, when he tried to lift it up a little bit, it tilted like crazy. And Brian and I were holding it, barely holding this thing from falling backwards right here. It was really touch and go. So at this point, we just had to get it forward, because if we just got it that few feet, we could lower it back down and get out of this precarious position. And so he moved the Bobcat, and we got it there and lowered it down. One final issue we had to deal with was that the back of the cabin top was skewed over about a foot, while the front was just about right. So we had to raise just the stern and then pivot the Bobcat slightly to put it in position.
So now what we're doing is taking straps down and attaching it. We did them both sides there, but we're going to be doing them from up above here over to the shipping container, and from the other side over here and down to a pole that's on the other side of that fence, not the wood fence. It's a very secure cemented in pole down there. And so that'll keep it from going anywhere. And then we're also going to be screwing it in from the top as well. So it's going to be pretty solid up there and sit there until we need to lower it. But when it comes time to lower it, it's going to be a lot easier, because right here at this L shape right there, that's the deck. And we'll be able to walk along the deck here all the way around this thing, and by hand with enough people just move it around, lower it down, all that stuff. It's the only difficult part here was it's so heavy and it's so high in the air, 14 feet, that there's no way for humans to get up there and do it right now. But later we can adjust it and everything with humans just walking around on the deck. So it really won't be that hard. So we're just going to strap it in place right now. It's within a couple inches of where it needs to be, and that's accurate enough to sit there until we want to lower it down the last 6 inches. Well, I will have to say that that was touch and go a few times, where it was very rickety up there. But I just want to say, as crazy as it was, we didn't drop it, and it's up there.
Okay, well, getting that cabin top raised up was much more excitement than we bargained for. In hindsight, we might have wanted to use a crane instead, but we went ahead with it, and poor Phil, it was almost much more than he could manage and take.
Actually, I'm fine.
Are you really?
I am. You can stop.
All right.
Oh, but it was a little bit more exciting than we really wanted it to be. But we got it up there, and it didn't fall down. So in the end, all was well. And it is the penultimate job as far as a large piece of the boat. There's only, in other words, there's only one more big one that's a large structure to go, and that's the bridge deck. And so we're going to construct that next and get that raised up into the bottom of the boat. But at least that only has to go up about 4 feet, not 16 feet in the air like this cabin top had to go. So we're glad that's behind us. And I want to thank Brian DeRuiter for bringing that Bobcat over and doing a stellar job using something to raise that roof that wasn't meant to do that. And so it was very difficult, and we managed to get it done with his help. And of course, Nick came by and helped us a lot with the lines and the steadying of the whole thing, and basically doing whatever I asked him to do immediately. So that was very helpful. And as always, our XO Brian was there to help as well. And so thank you, Brian. Without all four of us there, that thing would have not gotten up there or fallen, one of the two. So that is done. And I'm happy that it's done. But we'd like to thank you all for watching this crazy episode. And you probably think we're all nuts, and you're right. But at least that crazy job is behind us. So thank you all for watching, and thanks to our patrons for their support of our nutty channel. And we're going to see you next week for more boat building.
Yes, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and click on the bell icon to be notified of our next video.
See you then.
Bye.